Hello, everybody, and thank you so much all for coming. This is a pretty good crowd. We're so happy to have you all here. The weather cooperated, so we're here to look at this wonderful show here. I was very honored to be asked by Cathy do you want to go moderate and talk about our work? I said, sure, let's go ahead and do it. So one of the things that at first came to my mind was the title, Between Friends. If you got any of you or both of you want to tell us a little bit about what's about that title?
Well, Cathy, excuse me, I have laryngitis, but I'll try and talk some without coughing too much. Cathy and I met, it must be 40 years ago almost, because my daughter was just born, and her children, her oldest son was already born, and her younger son was coming along. And we were in a babysitting co-op together, and we have kept up our friendship over 40 years, sharing babysitting and sicknesses and wedding dresses and things like that, and art. So we started together doing our artwork collaboration with the Wild Washington. So I'm a poet. I studied poetry for many years and taught poetry at the Naval Academy. And trying to keep our children interested, and wanting to do something outside. I just can't take too long being inside with little screaming kids. So we'd go outside to around Washington, go to monuments, and pretty soon found lots of animals on different sculptures around town. So then I thought, well, we could have an alphabet book. Cathy came and took photos, and we thought about them, and just pretty soon we had a book together. So I wrote poems, Cathy took photos, and then did these amazing digitized illustrations. So there are many, many layers, and it's almost like a sculpture itself. So look carefully at those because they're fabulous. The book that we published from that has been around for 20 years. So because our publisher went out of business, we received a lot of boxes of copies. So we actually paid a lot for them, but she gave them to us. But we're trying to empty our closets, and hopefully you'll take one away with you tonight. Cathy, do you want to?
And then you brought a few copies of the books there, right? Yeah. Yeah. So whenever you guys can come and take a look, most of you, I'm sure they've seen it, but just in case.
Yeah. Well, Nancy and I, as Nancy said, go back many, many, many years, and we've been pretty big influences on each other. I mean, besides sharing maternity clothes, we've shared real passions for both art and poetry. And Nancy even got me to try to write some poems, and I wrote a whole book about noses that was never, an illustrated book about noses called Ad Nauseam, that I do not have, was never published, is in a box someplace. But I did it, and Nancy helped me with it, and didn't make too many cracks about my poetry. She was very polite. And she had gotten me to do things like sign up to do artist in residence program. It was a program that Nancy had been in, was it Wyoming that you started being in an artist in residence program?
I think my first was
Catoctin? Oh, okay. And then, so I went throughout the state and taught art classes at different schools. Well, under the one condition that I was not responsible for their behavior. The teacher had to stay in the room and do classroom management, and it worked out just fine. So now we are many years later, both of us still doing, Nancy still does poetry and art. I still do art. I paint all the time, and that's what we do. And we see each other and go for walks.
And we do workshops together with a lot of kids, making accordion books about noses and other things. making accordion books with children. Oh, yeah. Cathy, do you want to explain? Because you're the real expert.
What, you mean for Gaithersburg and stuff?
No, just when we make accordions.
Oh, yeah. We've gone into schools together and done poetry and art projects and women's shelters. And we've done, different projects with the women and the kids where we make folded books and pop-up books. We've done that over the years. And our most recent one was at Friendship Heights Community Center. And we did a project with a lot of kids just last year. So that's an accordion book. And there's a magic book that you can also make out of one sheet of paper, but I won't bore you with that. Okay, I think that's it.
I get yeah. Thank you for sharing, because it's sometimes it's very important. I mean, not sometimes, every time it's very important to know where all these, how the things happen, what's behind the scenes. So this is actually the talks are a very good opportunity to know. You go to the show, you see the paintings, you see the artwork, but what's behind. So the story between friends is very important in this show. I think is what brings it together. Yeah. So that was very nice. You guys were talking about I always heard poetry and this and poetry and visual arts poetry, and I think I'm gonna go to Cathy if you want to be very concise, because we want to save your voice. How is that relationship? Of the poetry and how what comes first? Well, I don't know. Please share that with us.
So yes, I did start off as a poet. Can you hear? Yes. And so again, I would write little poems when I had my kids out there climbing around the monuments, and I'd write little haiku-like things because you couldn't write too much. And I would collect them in boxes, and for years they just sat around. But eventually, I think we published this book in 20. What is it? 20. Yeah, so we must have 2005. We published the book. So I've always been drawn to poetry and art together. One of my main favorite poets is Wallace Stevens, who was a great admirer of modern art and he lived in New York for a while and used to go to the Armory, went to the Armory show, which is a big modern art show and that introduced French Impressionism to the Americans. So anyway, I have written poems, and then I started, many years later, I started trying to I've always liked art, and I've always wanted to do something more with my hands than just write. So I did calligraphy for a while, but that wasn't quite enough. So I took a couple of watercolor classes, and then I decided that's what I want to do. And at that point, I was also too old to really start too many other things. So I said, I will stick with watercolor no matter what, because oil and acrylics, and I'm not that.
Actually, they say, I found out recently, I've always been into watercolors too, and apparently it's one of the hardest media. You think oil paints and all that, they're more forgiving because you can erase, you can change it, oh my gosh, I messed up. But with watercolor, it is what it is. You have to, which is nice too, because you let go. Okay, it's not what I expected, sure. Right?
There are always surprises. Yeah. But I did have a wonderful teacher who one time I was complaining about a piece that I was working on, and she said, well, I know you can fix it. And so I said, yeah, okay. And I did. Right. So you can do other things with watercolor, even though you can't fix part of it, you can fix something else. Anyway, I started then in these watercolor classes actually exhibiting as a student, and I saw that people actually looked at paintings on the wall. They would come to opening receptions and they would stand in front of a painting and look at it. So I thought, nobody reads poetry like that. Why don't I put my poems on the paintings? So that's how that started.
And also the combination, when you see the collages, the combination of the words with the images is very, because actually we think, one thing is writing and one thing is the visual arts. But sometimes when you put them together, for example, in some of these pieces, they become, there's the writing and it's the meaning of the writing, but there's also words become image as well. So they're part of the composition of whatever you want to show. It's not just like you're reading. Exactly, you're reading, but at the same time you're looking at something. So it's really nice that balance that you have there. The image, but the writing is a good fusion, I would say.
Yeah, and I've always been a reader, and frequently I'll try to get a title for a painting out of something I've read or find inspiration in something I've read. So, poetry, I read the poems in the New Yorker pretty religiously. But I've always enjoyed Nancy's poetry in particular, and she has a whole book of very spiritual poems. What's the name of that book? Spirit Hovering. And I've taken a couple of those poems and thought about them. I haven't necessarily done any paintings, but I have thought a lot about paintings that I could do related to that book. So we've worked, back and forth on projects and on our walks. And on one of our walks, Barbara saw us and said, "Hey, you want to do a show at the town hall?" And we both looked at each other and said, "Sure." So thank you, Barbara.
I was so thankful that you both were willing.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun. We always look for things to do together.
I know, yeah. It's one of those things. When you're an artist, you always want to share your work. You're in your studio working, painting, doing whatever you do. But the whole point of doing that is so we can share with the audience to see reactions. That's why we do these things that are so important, because people want to know what's behind the work. So that's very important. And also you were talking about poetry too, but that I want to jump to the next question, your influences. And maybe I start with you, Cathy. We talked about before how her work, if you guys are familiar with the work by Edward Hopper, it reminds us, for me, I think of Hopper as soon as I saw your paintings, but what are your influences? You were saying before, I read Nancy's poems and then I take inspiration from that. I let you go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I tend to have, it's like 52 flavors of ice cream. Whatever I see the day before is my influence for the next painting. I tend to like paintings that are figurative, and Edward Hopper is a huge influence. Mark Tannen, who is a current artist, is wonderful. Of course, I love Sargent. I like people you have a freshness to their brush stroke.
You have a preference for the human figure?
Yes, I love to do figurative work.
Yeah.
And so I do mostly figurative work, and everybody says, don't do figurative work. Nobody buys figurative work, so I continue to do figurative work and tough noogies.
Right. You're stubborn.
Yeah.
What else does it influence your work? How you come up with these ideas? Where do they come from? And
well, I was going to start by saying that when I first came to Washington, D.C., I was 14 years old, came from California, we lived in Northern Virginia, totally different environment. I was, just didn't know how to integrate myself into life here. But I went to the National Gallery and I saw the French Impressionists. And I guess it reminded me, I had spent time as a child in France, in the south of France. And I just can, and in California, in Southern California, and also in Florida, so kind of the same vegetation was around. So I just felt at home with the Impressionists, and I felt like I grew up with them, and everything goes back to them and to Cezanne for me.
Oh my
and
gosh,
I taught a course actually in Cezanne and Wallace Stevens, who's my favorite poet, and used to look at the Cezannes in the Metropolitan in New York City, and wherever he could find them, he'd go out searching. So I do the same thing. Wherever I'm in a new city, I go looking for those Cezannes. But I love his off balance, the aspect of his work setting you off balance because it's unbalanced. He has plates of apples or oranges, and it looks like they're falling off the table. So you just have to sort of stop and start again and say, what am I seeing here? So I don't think I have that same quality in my work, but maybe in the later work, so some of these collages over there, the more colorful ones grew out the mantelpiece one there with the different vases and candlesticks. That was more of my first kind of work that I did with just more literal things. And then I got more abstract, but I still wanted to create something that was very visual. Mm-hmm. So I think scientists were my inspiration there. So I looked at a lot of science books, like my jellyfish there and the blue.
That one there, yeah.
Yeah, and I just get mesmerized by those things. So Wallace Stevens, scientists, Cezanne. Yeah.
And sometimes you never know what is gonna click at some point, like we all come from the art world. You have the main names, but sometimes that happens to me all the time. I go to a grocery store, or you're like, oh, I see this. I go to when you go shopping to Macy's or one of those. I love the mannequins. I'm not looking at the purse. I'm like, look at that mannequin. Look, why is red? Why is so shiny? Why is so weird? So there's so many things that you never know that are gonna come up in your own artwork, everyday life. It can be a big influence. All the things that you see, all the things that you live, when you were a child, when all those things at some point come together. Sometimes consciously, and sometimes they just happen because they're in you. They're in you. And so yeah, that's great. I really wanted to hear, and I think you guys appreciate to know, where all this comes from, because it's not just out of the blue, right? And that speaking of processes, techniques, and all these things, any of you, whoever wants to, if anybody wants to, you were pointing out those pieces there. If you want to point out at some piece, you were talking about Cathy. You brought some sketches, and I was asking you, do you sketch in drawing, or do you sketch in painting? How do you, a little bit of how you start your process, your technical process?
Okay, well, I'll get up. I've actually brought some things. What I do is I always work on, I do a whole composition first. A study, like this is a study, just a little painting, and you can see it closer later. And then I'll figure it out. I'll see if I want to change things, and then I go big. And so here's a painting that that I did based on that smaller one. And I think it worked out pretty well. One thing, and I can talk about some of the differences, like in the study, I had a line separating that guy over there, and I thought, that's, yeah. And I thought, well, that's not good. Why should he be so separated? Right. And sometimes you tend to do things and you change them radically from when you do the study to when you do the actual painting. I didn't bring this. This is part of the collection that the town hall has. And this is called Simple because it was in a restaurant called Simple. And it has nothing that's simple about it because, of course, do you recognize who these people are? Chuck Brown and Marion Barry. Yeah. So there's nothing simple, and it's really about gentrification because there's a lot of young people there who are very hip. And, it's just, that's what my idea for it was about gentrification. So sometimes I do things on issues of the day. Let's see if I have another one. Here's one that I just finished up last week from being in New York. Here's the study. Mm-hmm. As you see, there's 2 women in the front. There are other people around there. And the only thing that's lit up is the street over there. Okay, and then this is my finished one. I got rid of one lady, added a few more. You change things around a lot. And so anyway, that's what my whole process is.
Do you change them on the spot or like as you go?
If something isn't working, I just change it.
Right.
And I've gotten to the point where I no longer find anything in my paintings precious. Okay. So I have no problem scraping it out and redoing, starting over, painting over. At some point you get completely, you don't fall in love with your work anymore. Right. But you want to just get the best painting out of it that you can. So.
And I don't know if that happens to any of you, but I don't know, as you start aging, you become a little more patient with yourself. Yeah. And you just, that you can't get attached to things. Right. It doesn't matter. I'll start over if it takes me 3-4 days or a month. Who cares?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You've always got a few things going at the same time. So that's that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I need to give this to you because they can't hear you.
Were these from a photo? Do you tend to work? Great question. Do you tend to work from photos that you take or that you find?
I always. Oh, yes. Sorry. I always take my own photos, and I'm always walking around with either my phone. Thank goodness we have phones that are convenient, or a camera, and I take many photos of any particular scene. And then from that, I'll come up with a sketch, which may have little to do with the actual photo, or maybe it'll be very close to the actual photo. It just depends. And then once I have my study done, then I change it further when I go big. And that's my process.
I have a question too. Is this one in a restaurant? Is that a server in a restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you take that photo and
Yeah.
you decide that you take so many that you are going to use it,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that the woman would be very flattered to know that, she was chosen to be painting. Do you ever get back to people and say,
That's interesting.
Yeah, on occasion I do. And what I do before I if I'm going into a restaurant and want to take some photos or see people that I want to take photos of, sometimes I have to admit that I take the photo first and then I ask permission. What's the expression? Better to ask permission later. So that's what I do, because sometimes people really don't want you to do it.
Yeah.
And I won't. I just don't. Or else I try really hard to talk them into it. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Jane?
Yeah, I just want to know how you make the decision.
You have to
You have 2 people in this
Yes, I can give you this for you.
All right. So the last painting you just were discussing, you have two ladies in that painting. Why did you decide to take that one lady out? Did you want more in the background? What was your reason? Okay. I thought it would be... okay. When I painted it, I thought the focus really should be on that one woman in the front that I left in. I thought she was more interesting, and having her silhouetted against all the dark areas with that blonde hair that went white, there was light just hitting it. And so I thought, well, that's the important element there, and the other one is irrelevant. The other woman just wasn't that important. So she, took the bus and she was gone. So that's it. You really have to take a look at what you're doing and then make judgments about what will make a good painting. And that usually, I usually draw and paint and draw and paint. And then at some point I say to myself, just paint the damn thing. And then it becomes a painting at that point.
And the hair is so important. The hair.
Yeah, the hair. Right.
It's kind of like when your eyes go there.
Mm-hmm. Right. So.
Yeah, most of your paintings are environments.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've painted these two people who I find very interesting.
Oh, you mean my son and my granddaughter?
Okay, well.
It was at Jazz Fest, and I had taken that picture. And that's my son and my granddaughter, and that's why I painted that picture. But I like the joy. It just felt very joyful to me, and it was a fun time.
I think it's a very successful piece.
Oh, thank you.
I really like that.
And I have a question for Nancy. Oops, sorry. Actually, this piece here that's on the, what do you call it? It's on a grill,
Yeah,
on
the grid.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you
The
ever
fencing.
come up with that idea? We've hung a lot of shows here in the town hall, and we've never seen anything quite like that. And it's wonderful.
Well, I've had actually several iterations of this show, and one of them took up the whole room with individual. Yeah, I went around the alleys. I love scavenging things. I went around the alleys in my neighborhood, and I found a big round something iron thing. Excuse me. And anyway, I had various broken fencing things, and then I thought, you know what? Actually, I had another show, and they only had one wall. And so I went outside, and I found this. This is fencing for trees. Deer fencing. So I just put it on there. And I think I'm going to keep it there. And I'm looking for an organization that would like to have it. I could just give it to, and they could, show it around if they wanted to. These all came out of a time when I was in the border of Mexico and the Arizona. And actually, I couldn't process it. So I came back and I painted some things, and then I put words to them. So they're just different experiences that I either experienced or read about. I did not experience the vulture having eaten a person, but I read anthropological reports that happened. So I was just haunted by that. So anyway, then the grid just came out, and then I had been in Mexico when I was 19, and I had learned so colorful there. I learned to do some embroidery, and none of my children want my stuff anymore. So I thought, well, okay, I can turn that into art too. So I did that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just ask you a little bit about the size. Like how do you decide the size of your artworks? Because sometimes, your paintings, we can stand here and see them, but here the work becomes a little more personal. You have to get closer to read, to see all the little details. Is that something that you've always tried to do, work in small pieces, or how do you manage the scale? Is it important for you?
No, I always wanted to go big.
Uh-huh.
But the postcards from the border just seemed like an appropriate size.
Right.
And, you can write little things. And so I came up with that. And now with my other little collages there, I also, I do some workshops, and I found that it's very convenient not to have to carry too much stuff.
Right.
And so I've got a box that's, 8 by 10 or whatever, and I can carry everything I need in there. So, yes.
Are the postcards up there the same ones as in the postcards on the border book?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a whole book on that too, with illustrations of the postcards, and then with the writing on them, with the poems on them. But I also change sometimes my poems, and so the versions that are actually printed in the book are different. So the painting and the poems are there the same, but the version of the printed poem is a little different in some cases.
Would you explain how you do watercolor and collage? And when you have different layers and things, it's so cool. And the closer you get to it, the better you can appreciate the complexity of it. So,
okay, great. So for my jellyfish, I scavenge some things. So if you go up and look at it, you'll see that some of the blue background around one of the jellyfish is the inside of envelopes that you get from financial institutions, or something that wants to keep your money private. And so I just start collecting things, papers, and then I was trying to go a little bit bigger, so I have a lot of watercolor, and I have these old, from my kids, working with kids, rollers. And so I would paint the rollers, and I'd paint different colors, and then I just slather it on the paper, and I'd get things from nature. I'd paint leaves, fallen leaves, and I'd put that and stamp it on the paper. So
do you kind of like compose them as you go, or you think about them first? How do you put them together? Because collage is one of those media that is not that simple. It's not easy. You think that you say collage and I glue a bunch of pieces of paper on another piece of paper. But the way you have to glue them and put them together needs to make sense in a way that it looks like a finished composition, that is a whole, as opposed to a bunch of little loose pieces on top of a piece of paper. So I wondered how you
it's a process of going back and forth.
Right.
And I usually have the background, the very basic background started first, and then I layer the different papers on, and I pick new ones and different ones and try them all out. And then I do a pen and ink drawing of an animal that I've been wanting to do something with, and then I put that on, paint that. So thank you.
Very nice. I guess, Cathy, you want to share something else about your process, your media? One thing I wanted to say about your work, the brushstroke. I was, when you look up close, maybe you guys later, you really look at the work, your brushstroke, it shows. It's so fresh. I paint as well. I'm not a painter. I'm more like a drawing, multimedia, sculpture kind of thing. But when I paint, I like my colors to be very flat. And I struggle, like, I don't want to see that stupid brushstroke. I want it flat. But when I see that, like, I wish I could do that, How do you do your process? Is this more like sketch kind of thing? It looks very natural. It looks...
Well, at this point, I have many paintbrushes, and too many paintbrushes. And I like a more brushy look to things. And when I don't, there's mop brushes that will take down the brushiness of it.
Okay.
And sometimes, I don't want to go too much in the weeds, but I'll use different materials, mediums on particular brushes to stiffen them up, so I can use it in certain ways. But there's all sorts of techniques, and I also use rollers and brayers and whatever to get texture into my paintings, because I feel like that's very important.
Yeah, it's very interesting the texture, because that's another part of, when you're an artist, you start building your own vocabulary, your visual vocabulary, and sometimes you think, we all kind of, painting, oil painting, we are so different, and then it's unique of each of us. To do, I like the brushstroke this way, or I like this way.
And I don't know if any of you have looked at Sargent paintings very closely, but he will say more with a single brush stroke than anybody in the world. Yeah. Where you just bear down, and the brush stroke itself is just individual brush strokes and are beautiful. And that's something I aspire to.
Yeah. Okay, I guess if we, I think last, and then you guys can ask more questions. You guys we're gonna be around for a little bit longer. But my last thing I wanted to ask you, what's next? You guys have any projects coming up?
Yeah, I have a few things coming up. Let's see. I have, University of Maryland Global Campus has a show this summer, and I've got a piece in that, and that's like a big deal for me. And then there's a Sassy Museum in California at Pomona, and I have something there. And then this summer in Frederick, I'm going to have a solo show at, I'm in a gallery up there, Volta Visions. And then in November, there's a show that a friend and I are another friend, longtime artist friend, she's a pastel artist, and I are going to have a show at Strathmore, and we're going to take over the first floor and have lots of paintings up. So that's basically it.
Busy.
Yeah, it's busy. And next month I go to Vermont for an artist residency where you just paint straight for 2 weeks, and it'll be great.
Is that the Vermont Studio Center?
Vermont.
That's
Center.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and there's going to be a lot of writers there too, and the writers frequently have the best things to say about painting, whereas we don't have that much to say about writing.
Right.
But they see things in your paintings you never knew were there. And Nancy has that quality too. She can spot something and have a whole story about it. And it's great. So it's good to go back and forth and have a lot of feedback that way.
You need it. Yeah, when you're an artist, sometimes you're in your studio and you're wondering, is this okay? Do I need to add more? It's always nice to have fresh eyes or somebody else that doesn't know your work, look at it, and then they see things that you don't see. So it's always nice that's why those residencies and all those are very interesting, because you interact with other people.
Right.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead. Oh, sure. As long as it doesn't.
Yes, I can. There's one poem that I can't pronounce
nice.
something. But these are wonderful.
The Louise Bourgeois spider in the sculpture garden. Just read the first.
Okay, here goes. Spider, to round the path in the garden and confront the spider looming, leering, menacingly striding, is to be as by a small fear magnified, thrust aside from the self, panting, flushed. I'm going to read the whole thing. But to crawl beneath the great maternal body and into the cave of legs, powerful, delicate, silver patinaed, is to become a child again, protected, safe in the mother's arms, invulnerable to harm, to all tempests tossed, but the sting of childhood lost. And
So beautiful.
sure. Oh, okay. Nancy has laryngitis, so she'll pitch in anyway. But Nancy and I, when Nancy wrote a version of that poem, it was about the warmth and love of a spider. And I thought, spiders aren't loving, they're scary. I hate spiders. I kill spiders. I get rid of spiders. I don't want to be around spiders. And Nancy rewrote the poem so that it reflected both fear and a maternal instinct. And I thought the final poem was just beautiful. So we always went back and forth on some of the poems, but that one in particular had both our influences.
Yeah, definitely. And I got so caught up in looking at Louise Bourgeois' pictures of spiders.
Oh my
She has
God,
hundreds
they're
of
amazing.
thousands of them. And she talks about how maternal they are and I guess I'd never thought about, I always kind of like spiders. I used to try and capture trapdoor spiders in California. But Cathy, when I read that maternal part of the spider, she said no. And I said, well, I guess you're right. Yeah, they are kind of frightening to some people. So it really made me think again and appreciate that so much, Cathy.
And when I was in college, I took psychology. I was in a psychology study for people who were terrified of spiders. So I was able to fondle a tarantula, but don't get me near a house spider.
Thank you all, I guess.
Okay, no, thank you guys so much for coming. This was great, and they're gonna be around for more conversation. And
Yeah, I want to thank you both so much for sharing your work with us for the last 3 months it's been, and then for leading us through this talk about your work. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I thought the three of them did a wonderful job. So thank you so much. And I want to thank, in case he watches this, Richard Siegman, who is the person who's responsible for hanging our shows here in town. He doesn't like to come to these events, but hopefully he'll watch it. And it was quite challenging to hang this show because the work is so different from one another. But Richard did a beautiful job, and I think it's an absolutely stunning show. So thank you so much.